With Australia's A-League starting in November, let's check out what their stadiums look like. Let's go.
The biggest, richest, most important association football league on the continent. It features an eclectic bunch of stadiums, one of the world's longest road trips, and sunshine, because it's played over the summer.
This amazes me, okay? That I assume you play Football A-League in your summer to match up with Europe's leagues. But I realise how hot it can get during your summer. To be playing football in those heats, how they do it, I don't know. Because bear in mind, over here, you know, we're at 10 degrees. That's sort of an average, I think, even colder than that in our winter. So fair play to the boys in the A-League and the girls in the playing football as well, who play in the summer. Incredible.
So here are the A-League 2021-22 stadiums. Amy Park, Melbourne City, Melbourne Victory, and the nomadic Western United will play a few games here as well. This award-winning stadium, located in what is one of the world's greatest sports precincts, was actually the first notable rectangular stadium in the city's history.
It's it's next to the MCG, isn't it? In the Olympic Park, is it the Olympic Park? I think so. It's interesting because it actually, I've looked. I don't know if I specifically looked at this in my VR video, but I certainly saw it when I looked at the MCG, which was the first VR video I did. But it almost looks like someone's blowing bubbles, or someone has put in the dishwasher. Someone has put washing up liquid in the dishwasher, and then all of a sudden it's going out like clouds.
Melbourne being an Australian rules football loving city. The unique geometric cloud-like exterior is complemented by an absolutely stunning interior.
It is nice.
I like how the top of the stands actually followed that cloud-shaped outline. What a way to start the video.
Like he just said it, like that cloud, the cloud sort of outline is lovely. It would be a real big shame if this stadium does not get filled, because actually this looks like a perfect football stadium. This would be amazing even over here. I think that's a lovely stadium. You know, the tiers at the top on that larger stand there is steep, so you're looking down onto the pitch. So I reckon that would be a really nice stadium to watch a game in. I just hope it gets made used, if it, you know, it's used and has a decent capacity filled.
Commbank Stadium, Western Sydney Wanderers. It's the newest of the A-League stadiums, having been built on the site of the old Parramatta Stadium just a few years ago. The design is very European. It has a double tier of seating on all but one side where the luxury suites and whatnot are, and even a terrace or safe standing room, which is very rare in Australia.
Interesting. I'm going to link it back to our football. The Premier League, I think they want to test standing tiers. Now, obviously, they got rid of standing terraces when you had the Hillsborough disaster. Basically, overfilled, collapsed. I think is it 93 died? Might be 96, 93 or 96. So I'm still a bit sceptical about standing terraces, if I'm honest. Yeah, I'm not sure. However, I really do think the standing terraces allow for better atmosphere.
It does, however, convert back into seating when the rugby league season comes around. It's a lot more toned down than Amy Park, but it still looks great.
I think so.
I like how steep that upper deck is as well.
As I said, by having the steep upper decks, upper tiers as we would call them, it allows, as I said, it allows you to be closer to the pitch and actually look down onto it. If it's not as steep, you're just getting further and further away, and you know you want to have a decent view wherever you sit. But yeah, a nice stadium. It's got the vented sort of roof as well, with the gaps to allow the airflow, which is a good idea for the hot countries.
Campbelltown Stadium, Macarthur FC.
Straight away, it looks quite American with the open tops and it shouldn't look American because actually Australia's a hot country and therefore it's suitable. But even then, I think I would prefer to have a roof on me because I would not want to be sitting. If it was blazing hot, I would not want to just be sat there for a couple of hours. No.
Unlike Melbourne's new expansion team, Macarthur aren't planning on building their own new stadium, but instead upgrading a pre-existing one, which makes perfect sense given how many suburban stadiums there are in Sydney. But for now, it's your typical suburban stadium design that includes a couple of grassy hills to sit on, small stands with plenty of trees in the backdrop, and probably the smell of snags cooking on the barbie, which makes for a relaxed atmosphere. But not as much as Central Coast Stadium, home of the Central Coast Mariners. It's arguably the most picturesque stadium in Australia, mostly due to the fact that it sits on the shore of the rather confusingly named Brisbane Water.
To be fair, actually, yeah, that is quite nice. I wonder how many footballs are lost into the sea. I'm not too sure. Now, it doesn't seem like they're that far, but actually that is a big distance to be away from the pitch, I think. I'm not sure. It's very boxy. It's very boxy seating, isn't it?
An estuary. It's not an unobstructed view that the spectators have of the water and the sailboats. There are palm trees in the way. And on match days, speaking of barbecues, some giant sauce bottles, which add a bit of flavour. Other than the view, it's a decent stadium in its own right.
I don't know, it's just a bit boxy.
Cooper Stadium, Adelaide United. Adelaide is not just the city of churches, but it was also voted the sporting capital of South Australia.
Wow.
Mount Gambier was snubbed again. If you're a bit obsessive compulsive, you might be slightly annoyed that the main grandstand is slightly off centre.
To be fair, that is a bit annoying on the eye, isn't it? That is that is it. Just why? Oh, just move it slightly. Move it slightly. Let's have a quick first impressions. Once again, it's the whole thing of the hot weather. I think I would want to be sitting in here somewhere, just under the shade, because if you're there for 2-3 hours, yeah, it can get a little bit hot, can't it? And so I think having a roof, even in the hot countries, is a good idea. Not necessarily for the rain, but to shade from the sun. Am I right in assuming Adelaide are not one of the big teams? And I only say that because I haven't done any real research yet. I will do, I think, now that obviously I'm an Adelaide United fan. But the stadium just looks not very modern or developed. So, for example, you can see it's almost like they've done an add-on. There was this really small stand here, and then they've just added on that little extra bit. It just looks very strange, the fact that they've got a flat and then you have to go up the little sideways steps to get up there. Unique. Unique is possibly the word.
Well, that's because of the road that it backs onto. You also might be slightly annoyed that I didn't finish this set. I could mention the lack of a roof over most of the seats, but Adelaide stays pretty dry over the course of the A-League season, so that's all good.
So that's the point though, that's the point. It's not necessarily good. Just because it's dry, yes. Now, in the UK, we're sort of shielding fans from the rain, whereas in Australia, where if it is dry and hot most of the year, you should be wanting to shield them from the blistering heat. Because, as I said, your football is in your summer. So it gets hot.
HBF Park, Perth Glory.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
It's
big
kind of
stand.
similar to the last one with its lopsided design. But here, it allows for spectators in the larger stand to get an excellent view of Perth's skyline.
Wow.
It's one of the world's most isolated cities, by the way, which in recent times has come in handy.
Yeah. I don't know. I think this was filmed after the AFL Grand Final because obviously the Optus got the Grand Final this year because it's isolated and not got the COVID. I really like, and it's got that slight curve on the main stand. It sort of reminds me more of a... this is stupid. I'm just about to say it more reminds me of a rugby stadium like over in the UK. And then I look at the image, I look at the pitch, and it's got rugby posts. But actually, I think that is a better comparison. That this looks more like an English rugby stadium, with the sort of disjointed, all different parts of the stand are different. I actually surprisingly quite like it. Yeah,
the adjacent stand has been there a lot longer. It's from the days when it was an oval stadium. Over at the northern end, you have a stand known as the Shed, which is one of the few standing room only stands in Australia. It's got a lot going for it, this place, plenty of character. Marvel Stadium, Melbourne Victory.
I've looked at the Marvel Stadium in one of my VR Stadium tour videos. I actually really like it. I do like it, and I love because obviously it's Marvel. They've obviously got that little advertising deal going on. When you go around the outside of the stadium, they've got loads of Marvel things like Thor's hammer and Spider-Man climbing up a wall, and that's pretty cool. That's an attraction to see as well as the game.
It was the first retractable roof stadium in Australia, and it's still the only one. The roof certainly gets plenty of use in Melbourne, which is known for having 5 seasons in one day. The 5th one being Splorgen, which is simultaneous sunshine and hail. It was designed to host basically every sport there is, but despite the oval shape, it's still suitable for victory matches due to the movable seating.
I think that's a must almost, because obviously it's there as an oval stadium. For football, you end up being so far away. It's like I said, it's like when you have stadiums with a running track. In football and rugby, you want to be as close to the pitch as possible. So at least they've got the ability to move the stands in. I don't know what it does to the grass. It must absolutely wreck the grass. But I know, because look, they've got a little thing coming out of the ground. That's interesting.
It's a fine stadium. One that I'm sure Superman will be glad to put his name to.
Superman's not Marvel.
He's DC.
Oh, Batman then.
They're
Still
both in the
DC.
DC universe.
Okay, Shrek? You weren't expecting that, were you?
No, I wasn't. I love Shrek.
McDonald Jones Stadium, Newcastle Jets. This one shares a similar story with a few others in this league, in that it was converted from an oval to a rectangular stadium. That was done in the 1980s. The design's also a bit of an amalgam of others we've seen so far, just a little bit bigger and with an interesting pattern on the seats. What are they? Dinosaur eggs? It's quite a simple design, but I like it. And I don't blame the architects for playing it safe. This is perhaps Newcastle's most iconic building, and it looks like a giant Coffs Harbour International Stadium, the secondary home of the Newcastle Jets. It's a quaint little multi-purpose stadium in the scenic surrounds of Coffs Harbour.
That would actually probably be a very nice training ground for even a Premier League team. That would be an amazing training ground.
Simply consists of one grandstand that was recently renovated, and the rest of the capacity is made up of grass berms. Oh, and I should mention that this is the place where the Socceroos kind of bullied American Samoa, 31-0.
Woo!
Moreton Daly Stadium, Brisbane Roar, who recently left their longtime home of Suncorp Stadium. It is a major downsize, but Suncorp's seating capacity was surplus to their requirements.
This is the issue. Now the Suncorp, that was a huge stadium in comparison. This is the thing. Do you want to have a lovely stadium where you can fit thousands and thousands and thousands of people but can't fill it? Or do you want a slightly smaller stadium which you can fill, which then would hopefully create a greater atmosphere? I think that would be the lines of thinking for sure. Yeah.
And I'd much rather see a small stadium packed to the rafters. Although
I
the
think
stadium
so.
is quite rudimentary, it's looking pretty sharp after a major expansion and renovation.
Yeah, it looks
This
okay.
wasn't specifically for the Brisbane Roar, but the permanent tenants, the Redcliffe Dolphins, have aspirations of becoming an NRL expansion team. But two birds, one stone. And now we head across the ditch to...
The Sky Stadium looks amazing. I did a VR video of this one over in Wellington. It looks like, was it Apple headquarters or Google headquarters? I can't remember. It's one of them. But it fits in so well with its surroundings. It is literally in the dock, in an industrial area, and it matches and fits so well. I don't like the fact they're playing football in an oval stadium because, once again, you end up really far away. But it's a really cool looking stadium that fits its surroundings.
Sky Stadium, Wellington, Phoenix. It's a pretty nice location by the port, and I like that sleek metallic exterior, for which it gets the nickname the Cake Tin. I guess you could say the yellow seats are like the butter that you grease the tin with, and that the grass is the mould at the bottom of the tin because you put it back in the cupboard without noticing the thin layer of cake that was stuck to it. There isn't another stadium in New Zealand that's quite like this. It's a multi-purpose oval design that you're more likely to see in Australia. But Wellington is the windiest city on earth, so having a more enclosed stadium is ideal. The Knicks also play the occasional match at Eden Park,
That's
New
nice.
Zealand's biggest and most iconic stadium. It's more well known for rugby and cricket, of course.
It does look like they forgot to put the rest of the jigsaw in though, doesn't it? You've got the main stand there, which looks like it's been cut off. It does look like you've got to insert the last two pieces.
But Auckland doesn't have their own A-League team, and so for an out-of-town team they do attract a sizable crowd. It's an interesting design. I love the contrast between the exteriors of each side. A very modern translucent facade to the
Wow.
south, and a more traditional opaque facade to the north.
What? Those two contrasts. You've got like that bubble wrap effect, and then you've got some sort of old style government building. Weird.
Jubilee Oval. Sydney FC have a new stadium being built as we speak, so they'll temporarily be playing at two smaller stadiums. Although it's an oval, the field's not quite as large as some others in this league, so the views aren't bad. You may have already guessed, but I'm a fan of grass berms in the stadium, and this place has a rather impressive one above the seating that wraps its way around the eastern side of the ground.
To be fair, it's strange seeing those grass verges because you don't really have it over here in England. But I bet that is actually a brilliant spot to watch a game of football. Sitting there in the sun watching that, I reckon that would be a really good afternoon.
I'm actually quite fond of this stadium. They'll also be playing at Leichhardt Oval. Despite the name, this one isn't an oval. You can probably guess what went on there. The ground's facilities aren't exactly state-of-the-art, far from it, but it's a charming little stadium. I like how it's partially surrounded by a row of fig trees, and it's actually right by the water, although you can't actually see it. And on
That's a
top
lot
of
of
that,
trees.
a bit of a grassy hill to sit on. I'm like a broken record. Oh, and I'm not 100% sure they're fig trees, it's just something that I feel like I've heard before. Now to all the other stadiums Western United will call home.
I've also looked at the GMHBA Stadium at Geelong, and I wasn't sure. I love the lights. The lights look awesome, but I wasn't too sure about what the atmosphere would be like for this stadium. And don't get me wrong, I think it's quite cool. You know, almost the cat claws coming across is pretty decent, but I'm not sure about it as an actual stadium, and I don't know why. I can't put my finger on why.
GMHBA Stadium. It's actually the biggest stadium outside of Australia's capital cities, and after multiple renovations in recent years, it's looking pretty flashy. I especially like those floodlight towers.
He's on the same line of thinking. The floodlight towers are amazing, but look how far. Now, you're not as far. Look, you can see because there's the road going behind that stand. It's straighter on that side. But look how far. If you're watching the game from this stand here, the main stand, look how far away you are from the pitch. That's not good. You want to be on top of the pitch watching the game. You haven't got that here. Other than on one stand.
Geelong is a regional city, but it really isn't too far away from Western United's heartland. Mars Stadium. It underwent a major renovation 5 or so years ago that transformed it from a bog-standard country footy ground to a decent little part-time AFL stadium. Needless to say, it was not built for the A-League, but at least it allows for a small regional city like Ballarat to host a game or two. Come to think of it, it looks like a mini version of the last one.
Yeah, it sort of does.
Utah's Stadium. It's yet another regional stadium, but Launceston is nowhere near Western United's heartland. In fact, it's not even on the mainland, but the beautiful island of Tasmania, which doesn't have a professional football team of any sort. But at least they get a taste of it, and Utah's Stadium is pretty good considering Launceston's small population.
It's a small little local ground, and actually, I think it does what you want. But for football, once again, the oval stadiums, I know they're multi-purposing stadiums, and that's great. However, you are so far away from the pitch that you might as well have to have binoculars to see anything. Well, there you go. There are the stadiums for the 21-22 A-League season. A real mix there, actually, from stadiums such as the Marvel Stadium, which are huge, to that last one, or the Sydney stadiums that they're currently using, that are tiny in comparison. It's a real difference in stadiums, and it's interesting. Like I said, I like the fact that they're multi-purposing stadiums from AFL, rugby, and football. But those oval stadiums, they are not good for football or rugby. But yeah, who's looking forward to the A-League season? Let me know down in the comments. Which teams are you supporting? I'll catch you next time.